Let me ask you something. When was the last time you just stopped explaining yourself, stopped chasing after people who don't see you, stopped trying to win battles that never should have been yours to fight? If you're nodding right now, you're not alone, because at some point in life we all arrive at a moment of stillness, where the loudest thing we can do is say nothing at all. We're taught that silence means weakness, that if we don't speak up, defend ourselves, or prove our worth, we'll be forgotten. But I'm here to tell you something different, something deeper. Silence is not weakness. It is strength, held with discipline. It is pain transformed into patience. It is maturity wrapped in stillness. In a world where everyone is trying to be seen, heard, understood, there's something powerful about the person who chooses to just be. You see, silence isn't about shutting down. It's about stepping back intentionally. It's not about being cold. It's about being centered. I've learned through pain, confusion, and countless restless nights that silence isn't the absence of something. It's the presence of everything that matters. It's the place where healing begins, where you stop running, where you finally hear yourself. But let me be clear, this kind of silence, doesn't come easy, because it requires letting go. Letting go of the need to be understood by people who are determined to misunderstand you. Letting go of the habit of explaining your heart to those who never truly listened. You begin to realize that your energy is sacred, and not everyone deserves access to it. You stop asking for permission to be at peace. You stop chasing the kind of love that costs you yourself, and you stop handing out explanations like apologies. Can I tell you something I've learned the hard way? Not every argument is worth your voice. Not every battle is meant to be fought, and not every space is worthy of your presence, because every time you try to prove yourself to someone who refuses to see your value, you abandon yourself a little more. And trust me, your peace is too valuable to keep placing on auction for cheap validation. But here's the paradox. Silence is not passive. It's powerful. And sometimes, choosing not to respond is the boldest response of all. In today's world, everyone is quick to clap back, quick to post, quick to defend, to retaliate, to prove. But there is strength, deep strength, in the one who can stay still. In the one who doesn't flinch when criticized, who doesn't fold when misunderstood, who doesn't chase noise when clarity is what they're after. It's like walking through a storm. Without shouting at the rain, you just move, quietly, gracefully, with purpose. That's not weakness, that's mastery. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're in a room filled with noise, everyone's talking over each other, opinions flying, emotions rising, and you feel your heart race, your chest tighten. Something inside whispers, be still. You listen, you breathe, you don't add to the noise. That's the moment silence becomes your shield. That's when you remember, you are not here to react to chaos, you are here to choose peace over pride. There's a quiet kind of strength in walking away without slamming the door, in choosing your well-being over being right, in knowing who you are without needing to declare it, because the truth is, you don't have to respond to everything that reaches for your attention. Your attention is valuable, your focus is rare, and your peace, it's priceless. So here's what I want you to take from this. Silence is not the opposite of action. It is a decision, a boundary, a form of self. You don't owe everyone an answer. You don't have to justify your boundaries. You are allowed to protect your peace without explanation. Let that be your new definition of strength. And I know, it's not easy. It's easier to shout, to react, to fight, to be heard, but the kind of transformation that lasts, the kind that truly sets you free. It often begins with stillness, with choosing not to engage, with realizing that you don't have to attend every conflict you're invited to. So, if you're finding yourself quieter these days, if your circle is smaller, if your phone rings less and your soul feels more, that's not isolation, that's evolution. You're not lost, you're being refined. You're learning to live in alignment, not performance. You're choosing not to waste your energy on what doesn't grow you. You're protecting your mind, your peace, your spirit, and that, my friend, is strength. Not the kind that screams, but the kind that stands still and remains unshaken. There's a moment in life when something shifts. You're no longer interested in proving your point. You don't feel the urge to win every argument. You no longer chase to be understood, and that shift, that quiet, subtle, powerful shift, that's when real transformation begins. Growth doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes it comes with stillness, with letting go of the need to be right, and choosing instead to be free, because freedom isn't about control, it's about release. It's the peace of knowing who you are, without having to shout it from a rooftop. I used to think that being heard meant being respected. If I could just explain myself clearly enough, if I could win the conversation, maybe I'd feel more secure. But every time I tried to prove myself, I lost a little piece of my own peace. Because here's the truth, most people learn the hard way. You don't have to win the argument to win your life. You don't have to explain your worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. That's not maturity. That's exhaustion disguised as connection. Emotional maturity. Real maturity is when you start choosing peace over pride. You walk away, not because you're weak, but because your energy is too valuable to spend on what won't grow you. You stop raising your voice. Instead, you raise your standards. You stop defending every decision because, clarity doesn't need validation. Silence, in this way, becomes more than a pause. IT becomes a practice, a discipline, a sacred form of self-respect. Think about IT. How many times have you reacted from emotion, only to wish you had paused first? How many conversations became confrontations, just because silence didn't get a chance to speak? In sitting with your thoughts long enough to understand them, not just respond to them, silence is not avoidance. It's awareness. It's a choice, not to suppress what you feel, but to honor it without letting IT control you. IT says, I am not my anger, I am not my ego, I am not here to fight, I am here to grow. And when you start to live like that, when you choose presence over performance, your life begins to shift. You notice the weight of words. You stop using them as weapons. You start using them to build, not break. And when words aren't needed, you let silence speak for you. That's not being passive, that's power under control. But here's something deeper. In the quiet, when all the noise fades, you start to hear something else. Not just your own voice, but something even more profound. You begin to hear truth. And sometimes, you begin to hear God, because truth doesn't shout, wisdom doesn't scream, and peace doesn't come crashing in. It comes quietly, gently, like a whisper in the stillness. The world will try to convince you otherwise. It will push you to respond, to clap back, to be louder, stronger, tougher, but stillness. Stillness teaches you something no trinoxide fight ever will. IT teaches you to listen, to discern, to see what's real beyond the noise. And in that sacred silence, you reconnect with yourself. You remember who you were before the world told you who to be. I remember one evening, I sat alone in my room. Nitrogen monoxide music, nitrogen monoxide distractions, just me and my breath. And in that stillness, I realized how loud my life had become, not on the outside but inside. Thoughts, racing, ego, shouting, old wounds, whispering, and yet, beneath all of it, was peace. A peace that had always been there, waiting for me to stop and listen. That's the thing about silence. It doesn't just quiet the world. IT brings you back to the center. You see, you can't always control what happens around you, but you can choose how much of IT gets inside you. And silence is the gatekeeper. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, pause, breathe, let the moment pass without grabbing onto IT. You'll feel the tug. The ego will want to rise. The old version of you will want to speak up. But the strongest version of you, it'll stay still, rooted, unmoved, because maturity knows not everything requires a reaction. And when you start living from that space, when peace becomes your priority, your world transforms. You begin to attract different conversations. You begin to protect your energy. You begin to live from a place of intentionality, not reaction. You don't walk into rooms trying to be the loudest. You walk in knowing you belong, even in silence. So here's my invitation to you. Let silence become your teacher. Let it shape your responses, let it guide your healing, and let it reveal the truth that noise has tried to drown out. Because real growth isn't always visible. IT isn't loud. IT doesn't need applause. But IT shows up in how you carry yourself. Especially when no one's watching, so the next time you're tempted to speak from pain, pause. The next time you want to prove something, choose peace. The next time someone says, you've gone quiet, smile gently and say, I've gone inward. Because in that sacred silence, you're not shrinking, you're rising. And this version of you, the one rooted in stillness, clarity, and self-worth, that's the one the world has been waiting for. Let's take a breath together, deepen and let IT out slowly. Now, ask yourself this, when was the last time you truly felt at peace? Not just a break from chaos, not a few hours of distraction, but a deep, grounded, soul-level stillness. The kind that doesn't need noise to feel real. The kind that doesn't depend on anything outside of you. That kind of peace. It's not a luxury. It's not something you find once and hope IT stays. It's something you protect, fiercely, deliberately, daily. And here's the truth I wish someone had told me sooner. Your peace is sacred. It is the foundation of a life that is stable, meaningful, and worth waking up to. If you don't protect your peace, you will constantly feel like you're surviving, not living. You'll find yourself drained by things that don't matter, tangled in emotions that aren't yours, and giving your energy away to people who never knew how to hold IT. You see, peace isn't something you negotiate. IT's not up for sale. You don't hand it over just to keep someone comfortable. Peace is a boundary, and protecting IT is an act of self. It's saying to yourself, I choose me, even if someone else doesn't understand. I choose stillness over chaos. I choose alignment over attachment. But here's where IT gets hard. Sometimes choosing peace means letting go of people, letting go of familiar patterns, letting go of relationships that once felt safe, but now only bring confusion. And yes, IT hurts. There will be people who don't respect your boundaries. People who expect access to your heart without earning it. People who only show up when it's convenient for them. And when you finally say ENOUGH, they might leave. Let them. I know how painful that sounds. But here's the shift. Not everyone is meant to stay. Not everyone is capable of loving you without chaos. Not everyone is ready to meet the healed version of you. And that's okay. Because love, real love, doesn't come with manipulation. IT doesn't come with emotional confusion. IT doesn't require you to abandon yourself just to keep the connection. Let me ask you something. How many times have you lowered your standards just to hold on to someone? How many times have you said yes when your whole body screamed no? That's not love. That's fear, disguised as loyalty. Protecting your peace means trusting that if someone leaves because you set a boundary, they were never truly with you, not fully, because someone who honors you won't punish you for choosing yourself. Boundaries aren't walls. They aren't meant to isolate you. They're doors. And you get to choose who walks through. Not everyone deserves access to your energy. Not everyone is entitled to your vulnerability. Not everyone gets a front row seat to your soul. And you're not cruel for saying no. You're not cold for protecting your heart. You're not selfish for preserving your peace. You're wise. I used to think that kindness meant being available to everyone. But over time, I learned kindness without boundaries becomes self-destruction. You can be loving and still say, this isn't good for me. You can be compassionate and still choose distance. You can be spiritual, giving, open-hearted, and still protect your inner sanctuary like your life depends on it. Because it does. You don't owe explanations for your healing. You don't have to justify the space you take up. You are allowed to create boundaries that serve your mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And let's be real, it won't always be easy. Some people will guilt trip you. They'll say, you've changed. And you know what? They're right. You've changed. You've learned. You've learned that peace is more important than pleasing. And now you know better. So now, you move better. Protecting your peace might look like saying no without guilt, turning off your phone and reclaiming your presence, ending a relationship that no monoxide longer honors your growth, walking away from the drama, even when it's familiar, letting go of friends who drain instead of pour, and all of that is holy. That is what honoring yourself looks like. So if you're walking through a season of release right now, where you're redefining your circle, where you're protecting your space more than ever, know this, you're not pushing people away. You're simply no longer inviting them in if they bring chaos. You're not bitter. You're clear. You're not cold. You're caring. For yourself first, let your peace become your compass. Let it guide your decisions. Let it filter your relationships. Let it shape your boundaries. And if someone's presence disturbs that peace, trust that feeling. You don't need more evidence. Peace is not just a feeling. IT's a frequency. And once you align with IT, you'll never want to live outside of it again. So here's what I invite you to remember. Protecting your peace. Protecting your life. IT's not selfish, it's sacred. And the more you honor IT, the more your life begins to reflect the love, clarity, and calm you were always meant to experience. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to explain everything. Just keep choosing peace every single day. Let the noise fade, let the chaos pass, and let your soul rest in the knowing that you are safe because you've built the boundary. There's a kind of transformation that doesn't happen in the spotlight. IT doesn't happen when you're surrounded by applause or encouragement. IT happens in solitude, in silence, in those quiet, hidden corners of your life where no Trojan one's watching but everything is changing. Let me ask you, when was the last time you sat with yourself? Not to escape, but to evolve. Because some of the most powerful growth doesn't happen in noise. IT happens when you're alone but not abandoned, when you're still but not stuck, when you're silent but deeply being reshaped. From within, there's a sacred kind of strength that's born in those silent seasons. The ones where you're not updating anyone, not posting your progress, not explaining your process. You're just becoming, day by day, thought by thought, breath by breath, and no one sees it. But you feel it because the battles you're fighting aren't external. They're the quiet ones, the ones no one claps for, the ones no one even knows you're facing. You know the ones I'm talking about. The battle that keeps showing up when your heart is tired. The struggle to stay gentle in a world that keeps hardening you. The internal war between who you used to be and who you're becoming. These moments, they don't break you, they build you. Because silence, real, honest, intentional silence, empty, it's where you meet your true self. And yes, I get IT. Solitude can feel lonely at first. When the phone stops ringing, when the people disappear, when life gets quiet, you might feel abandoned, but you're not being abandoned. You're being invited. Invited to meet a version of yourself that only reveals itself when the crowd leaves. You're being called inward, not because something is wrong, but because something deeper is ready to be born. And in that sacred isolation, something beautiful happens. You start to notice your wounds, not to shame yourself, but to finally heal. You notice the habits that no longer serve you. the beliefs that were never really yours, the patterns that kept you stuck in cycles of survival. And little by little, as you sit with those truths, you begin to loosen your grip on who you thought you needed to be. You begin to release the layers of performance, of protection, of pretending. I remember a season of my life where everything went quiet. IT felt like I was losing people, losing opportunities, losing the version of me that everyone once clapped for. But what I didn't realize at the time was that I wasn't being destroyed. I was being redefined. That quiet season exposed everything I had been avoiding. The insecurities I buried, the exhaustion I normalized, the healing I postponed. And it was hard, but it was holy. Because sometimes things have to fall apart so you can rebuild from truth, not from trauma. Sometimes you need to be stripped down to remember your strength isn't in what you carry, but in what you're willing to let go of. The noise in your life, it may have been distracting you from the deeper work. The busy you called purpose may have been keeping you from your real healing. And solitude. Solitude doesn't destroy. It reveals, it reshapes, it realigns. Think of the caterpillar before IT becomes a butterfly. It doesn't throw a party. It goes inward, alone, wrapped in stillness, in darkness, unseen. But inside that cocoon, a complete transformation is taking place. And when IT emerges, IT doesn't look like its past. IT doesn't move like its past. IT flies because that's what IT was always meant to do. Maybe that's where you are right now. In the cocoon, in the quiet, in the part nitrogen monoxide 1 else claps for. But don't rush IT. Don't try to skip this season. Because the silence, it's forming your wings. The solitude, it's building your strength. And the stillness, it's introducing you to the version of you who no longer begs to be chosen, because you've finally chosen yourself. So if you're in a season where life feels quiet, where the crowd is gone, where the progress isn't obvious, take heart. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are becoming. And the strongest version of you, the one who walks in truth, who moves in peace, who leads with love, is being built right now. Not in noise, not in performance, but in stillness. So here's your reminder. You don't have to prove your growth. You don't have to perform your healing. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. Let the silence mold you. Let the solitude cleanse you. Let the quiet shape your strength. Because the world may not see what's happening, but one day they will feel IT. And by then, you won't need to explain a thing. Your presence will speak for itself. Take a moment. Close your eyes. If you can, take a deep breath. Let the noise around you settle for just a few seconds. Now ask yourself this. What would your life look like if you stopped reacting to everything and started focusing on what truly matters? Because here's the truth. The world will always be noisy. IT will always try to pull you in 100 different directions. But clarity is only found when you decide to focus. Focus isn't just about paying attention. IT's about becoming intentional with what deserves your energy, your time, and your heart. When you begin to focus, something powerful happens. You start to see the difference between what's urgent and what's truly important. You stop rushing to respond to everything. You stop chasing every opportunity. You stop living in reaction mode. And instead, you begin to live with direction. Think about it this way. Have you ever spent a day putting out fires, answering emails, replying to messages, running errands, and by the end of the day, you were exhausted, but you didn't feel fulfilled? That's the cost of distraction. That's the result of being busy without being aligned. But when you live with focus, your energy stops scattering. You're no longer just surviving your days, you're steering them. You start saying no often. Not out of coldness, but out of clarity. You protect your time like it's sacred, because IT is. Here's the shift most people miss. Focus isn't a one-time decision. IT is a daily discipline. Every moment, you are choosing what to feed your mind, who to give your attention to, what thoughts to entertain, what dreams to nurture. That's not small. That's not accidental. That's how alignment is built. You see, alignment isn't just about having a vision board or saying affirmations. IT's about the quiet, consistent choices you make every single day. It's waking up earlier, even when it's hard. It's saying no to distractions that don't support where you're going. It's building habits that match your future, not just your feelings. Because feelings change, but your calling, your purpose, that's steady. If you make room for IT, let me offer you a thought. When you're truly aligned, you don't have to chase. What's meant for you finds its way, not because you begged for IT, but because you became ready to receive it. Read that again. You don't attract what you want, you attract who you are. When you become someone who values peace, purpose, and presence, your life starts to shift. Not overnight, not through some dramatic announcement, but quietly, naturally, intentionally. You begin to notice the opportunities that align with your values, the relationships that don't drain you, the habits that feed your spirit instead of depleting your soul. And more than anything, you stop looking outward for direction. You start listening inward. That's the heart of alignment. Not asking, what should I be doing, but asking, who am I becoming? Let me share something personal. There was a season in my life where I was always chasing chasing validation, success, recognition. I thought the harder I worked, the faster I'd arrive. But the truth is, I wasn't getting closer to myself. I was getting farther. It wasn't until I slowed down, got quiet, and asked myself what I truly valued, that everything began to change. I didn't need more noise. I needed focus. So if you feel scattered right now, if your life feels out of sync, like you're moving but not really going anywhere, let this be your gentle reminder. You don't need to do more. You need to get clear. You need to reconnect with your mission, the why behind your days, because when you're focused, life begins to reorder itself. You're no longer pulled by pressure. You're guided by purpose. You're no longer fueled by fear. You're driven by fear. You're driven by faith. Let me say why. This, not everything deserves your attention. Not everyone deserves access to your energy. And not every good opportunity is aligned with your mission. Focus isn't just what you look at, it's what you turn away from. And the more you focus on what's real, your purpose, your values, your inner peace, the less tolerance you'll have for distractions. That's not selfish. That's wisdom. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you focus deeply on alignment, you start to flow. Things begin to come together, not because you forced them, but because you finally stopped blocking them with misaligned energy. You stop trying to be everything to everyone. You stop hustling for things that don't feed your soul, and you start becoming someone who moves from a place of calm certainty, because aligned energy is magnetic. People feel it, you feel it, and the right things, they come. So today, I want to invite you back to your center, back to your focus, back to your alignment. You don't need to rush, you don't need to impress, you just need to stay grounded in what matters most. Because when your thoughts align with your values, when your choices align with your goals, when your lifestyle aligns with your soul, that's when peace becomes your default. That's when success feels real. That's when you know to no longer have to explain your life, because you're living it with integrity. Let's take a moment together, a breath, a pause. Now ask yourself this. If you stopped explaining yourself today, would your life still reflect the truth of who you are? Because there comes a point in our journey when we realize words aren't enough. Not in a world overflowing with noise, opinions, and performances. In the end, it's not what you say, it's what you do. You see, real strength doesn't need to make an announcement. It doesn't need a spotlight, a microphone, stage. It moves differently. It shows up consistently, and it leads by example. We've been taught that we have to speak louder to be taken seriously, to defend ourselves. Not with noise, but with direction. Let me ask you this. What if the loudest thing you ever say is how you live? What if your presence in a room, your calm, your clarity, your steadiness was more influential than any speech you could give? Because people don't remember everything you say, but they remember how you made them feel. They remember what you stood for, even in silence. True. Leadership isn't about controlling the room. It's about anchoring it. It's not about being the loudest voice, it's about being the clearest one, even when you're quiet. Some of the most powerful people you'll ever meet aren't the ones trying to be followed. They're the ones who are simply aligned with what they believe, and others follow them because of how they live, not what they say. And this isn't about perfection. This is about presence. This is about showing up again and again, even when no one claps, even when it's hard, even when your voice shakes or no one notices your effort, because you're not doing it for validation, you're doing it for validation. You're doing it because it's who you are, and eventually, your life becomes the proof. Your discipline becomes your reputation. Your silence becomes your strength. You don't have to tell people you've grown. They'll feel it in how you respond differently. In what you're no longer tolerate. In the peace that follows you like a shadow. That's what happens when you lead with presence, when you allow your alignment to speak louder than your defense. People will misunderstand you, and you won't feel the need to correct them. People will question you, and you'll smile. Because you're not living for approval anymore. That's freedom. That's confidence. That's maturity. So if you've been feeling the pressure to explain yourself, to be louder, to convince the world of your worth, let this be your reminder. You don't have to prove anything, you just have to keep showing up. Keep honoring your values, keep building in silence, because eventually your life will speak volumes. Let people wonder how you did it. Let them feel your energy shift. Let your transformation speak in the way you walk, breathe, choose, and lead. And when they ask, what happened to you? You can simply smile and say, I stopped talking about it, and I started living it. Take a deep breath, and gently ask yourself, what am I chasing? NWHY. In a world that constantly pushes us to purchase success, love, validation, attention, it's easy to believe that the faster we chase, the sooner we'll arrive. But what if I told you, chasing is not the path to becoming. Chasing is the symptom of not knowing you're already enough. You see, chasing is often rooted in lack. It's born from a belief that something is missing, that you need to earn your worth, prove your value, convince someone to see what's already sacred within you. And when we chase, whether it's people, outcomes, recognition, we send the world a quiet message. I don't believe I'm enough yet, so I need something outside. of me to complete what's inside of me, but here's the shift. The moment you stop chasing is the moment life starts flowing. When you stop running after what's running from you, you create space for what is meant for you to actually arrive. IT's no trad longer about force. It's about alignment. You don't need to convince anyone to choose you. You don't have to fight to be seen. You don't have to beg for belonging. Because when you stop chasing, you begin becoming, and that's where the real transformation begins. Let's get real. How many times have you overextended yourself just to keep someone close? How often have you ignored your needs to maintain a connection, or please, a crowd? We've all done IT. We've all tried to earn love, worth, validation, not realizing that in the process, we were abandoning ourselves. But here's the beautiful truth. You were never meant to chase. You were meant to attract, and not through performance, but through presence, through authenticity, through becoming the kind of person who no longer needs to grasp, because you already are. So, what does IT mean to become? IT means you shift your energy inward. You stop asking, how do I get them to like me? And instead you ask, how can I be the kind of person who is aligned with what I truly desire? It's not about pushing life into your timeline. IT's about preparing yourself to hold the life you say you want. Because here's what we often forget. Good things don't just require attraction. They require capacity. You can attract love, opportunity, peace. But if you're not ready to hold them, you'll sabotage them. So instead of chasing outcomes, you build the foundation. You become someone who is emotionally grounded, mentally clear, and spiritually steady. And how do you do that? Not by grand gestures, not by dramatic life overhauls, but by small, silent choices each day. Waking up earlier to care for your mind. Saying no to what drains you. Choosing peace over urgency. Listening more than reacting. Loving yourself when no one's looking. These tiny decisions, they add up. They shape you. They build your character in the dark. So when the light finally comes, you're ready. There's a quiet kind of power in the person who has stopped chasing. They walk with ease. They speak with calm. They don't rush, because they trust their timing. They don't beg, because they know their value. And that person becomes magnetic, not because they're trying to be, but because people can feel that they've done the inner work. You don't have to say, you've grown. They'll see IT in your boundaries. You don't have to say you're worthy. They'll feel it in your energy. Let's pause here for a moment. What would happen if you stopped chasing right now? What would shift in your relationships, your work, your peace? Would you finally make room for what's truly meant for you? Would you stop trying to convince the wrong people? Would you start giving yourself what you've been begging others to give? Because the truth is, when you become the version of yourself that's ready, what's meant for you doesn't need to be chased. IT simply arrives, quietly, naturally, beautifully. So if today, you're tired of chasing, explaining, proving, take this as your permission to stop. You're not behind, you're not forgotten, you're not failing. You're just being called inward, to slow down, to return to yourself, to become, not perform. You're not here to force what's fading. You're here to build what's lasting. You're not here to please everyone. You're here to honor yourself. So focus on becoming, focus on building, quiet strength, on living in truth, loving without attachment, and walking with the kind of grace that doesn't need to prove itself. Because one day, everything you were chasing will start moving toward you, and you'll realize you didn't have to run for IT. You just had to become ready to hold IT. Here's the truth. No nitrogen monoxide one teaches us when we're young. You were never here to perform. You weren't born to earn your place in the world, to seek permission to exist or chase applause to feel whole. You were here to remember, to return, to come home to yourself. And that journey, IT doesn't need a stage. IT doesn't require a crowd. You don't need loud success. You don't need validation. You only need one thing: to be true to yourself. Let that settle in for a moment. You don't need to be understood to be valuable. You don't need to be liked to be worthy. You don't need to be loud to be powerful, because peace has become your new compass. Not performance, not pressure, but peace. Can I ask you something gentle? What would your life look like if peace was your number one priority? Would you still fight for things that exhaust your soul? Would you still overextend yourself for people who don't see your heart? Would you still chase love that makes you shrink? Peace is not passive. Peace is power. Peace is the result of choosing alignment over approval again and again and again. There was a time when I thought I had to hustle for my worth, that I had to be louder, better, faster, just to be seen. But it burned me out. It made me anxious. It made me forget the simple truth. Real transformation doesn't need to be announced. IT shows up quietly, in the way you speak more gently, in the way you set boundaries with kindness, in the way you choose rest without guilt, in the way you walk away, not in anger, but in clarity. When you shift on the inside, you don't have to shout it, because eventually, the world feels it, and not everyone will understand your evolution. That's okay. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be at peace with yourself, and that is more than enough. We've arrived at a turning point, a soft threshold between who you were and who you're becoming. And maybe for the first time, you don't feel the urge to explain anymore. You don't feel the need to be everywhere, do everything, say yes to everyone. Because finally, you've made peace with one sacred truth. Your value is not in how loudly you live. It's in how deeply you've come home to yourself. You don't need everyone to see your transformation. You don't need the world to recognize your healing. You don't need a spotlight to validate your growth. Because rebirth happens in stillness. It happens when you choose. Silence over reaction, presence over pressure, peace over proving. That's where your new life begins. Not with fireworks, but with a breath, with a whisper, with a quiet knowing. I am enough. Even here, even now. So from this place of stillness, ask yourself, what am I no nitrogen monoxide longer available for? What energy do I choose to release? Who am I becoming? Not for others, but for myself. Because when you answer those questions honestly, you start living on purpose. Not for the performance, not for the noise, but for the deep, clear resonance of a life aligned. And that's the most beautiful legacy you can create, not a perfectly curated story, but a life that feels like truth, a life where peace isn't just a concept. It's your foundation, where silence isn't absence. It's presence in its purest form, where transformation isn't for display. It's for healing, it's for freedom, it's for you. So if you've been searching for the sign, this is it. The permission to stop performing, the invitation to return, the space to soften, to breathe. Doobie, you're not behind, you're not too late, you're not too broken, you're just awakening. Quietly, beautifully, powerfully. You don't need the world's approval to move forward. You only need your own. And today, you get to choose. Peace, over pressure, over performance, over pretending. And when you do, the world won't just see the change. IT will feel IT in your calm, your courage, and the way you walk with quiet, steady light.